Hey, Kate, what did you eat last night?
I had a very delicious burger, and I violated my rule about burgers, which is I tend to only eat ground beef that is grass-fed or humanely raised or whatever. And there's a couple of places in town where the burgers are so delicious that I will occasionally make an exception. And this is one of them. So there's a place actually in my neighborhood where I have resisted going for the last couple of years, even though it's amazing, called Bad Apple. And they just have really good burgers, and the blend is created by someone called Pat Frieda, who's a very famous butcher whose blends are like his name is big enough that he goes on menus. You know?
Oh, wow.
They claim that it's his blend. So to my knowledge, it's not grass-fed or humanely raised at all, but oh my gosh, it's so good. And this one had Cambozola cheese on it, which is a mix of camembert and gorgonzola. So it's sort of brie bleu combo with arugula and bacon and an onion jam on it.
Onion jam.
And yes, like probably made with wine or something. And it was so good. And just the meat, it's really all about the patty. The meat is so incredibly delicious. And along with that, I had my first taste of Japanese whiskey.
Really? What the hell is Japanese whiskey?
Well, it's whiskey made in Japan, and I've been hearing over the last couple of years more and more about Japanese whiskeys, and apparently it's a huge thing, and it's really expensive. It's really high end. That's why we don't know about it, because it's
super
like fancy
end.
pants, I think. Yeah, I think so. And so I've known people who sort of collect Japanese whiskeys, and it's a bit of a fancy thing. So they had some kind of special that you could get like a sort of 3/4 ounce for $8. You know what I mean? It was like a tasting kind of thing. So I tasted it, and it was so good.
Really?
It was so complex and interesting. And I really sort of understand, given that this was probably a super cheap one, I really can understand what the fuss is about.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah, so we'll have to check out Japanese whiskey together sometime.
Immediately.
How about you? What'd you have?
I had pistachio soup. I made this recipe from Yotam Ottolenghi's book, Jerusalem, that we both love. And, you know, I love me some pistachio. So when I read the recipe, it sounded so complicated, but it actually turned out to be really easy. So you take a bunch of pistachios and you blanch them, and then once you blanch them, you remove the skins. And that was the ultimately like annoying thing.
Wait a minute. Were they in the shells?
No, they're out of the shell, but then the pistachios
They have a skin? Were they like normal
skin.
Pistachios out of the shell that you would buy and just eat?
Yeah.
And then you blanch them, and then there's a skin on them that
the
you
little
do?
skin, yeah. And he said to do this because he says you think it's not going to make a difference, and he says it doesn't make a difference in taste. It'll make a difference in color. If you don't remove the skins, he said your soup will just look sort of brown rather than the vibrant green color that it normally has. So I did it, and yeah, they totally came up. I was completely surprised too because I'm like, I just shoved those in my mouth.
And
it was very light,
and
I wouldn't say every pistachio had a skin. I eventually would use an immersion blender in the pot.
What else is in it? I'm fascinated. What makes pistachios
I agree.
into soup?
Exactly. So once you do that to the pistachios, in a little bit of butter, you cook shallots, ginger, leek, cumin, salt, and pepper. And then you cook that until it's soft and tender, as we always do.
And then you rub it all over your body and die happy.
You know me so well.
Sounds amazing.
But I finally got those tight jeans on. And then after you do that, you add veggie stock and, most importantly, saffron liquid, which I'd never worked before. You create saffron liquid just by taking some saffron threads and pouring water over it and letting it soak for like 20-30 minutes. And then you add the saffron liquid, and that simmers for 20 minutes. And then really once that's done, you take half of the soup that soup mixture you just made, and place all but like one handful of the pistachios in a pot, and then you blend it all together with an immersion blender. And then once you do that, you return that to the other half of that soup mixture you left and mix it all up. So it definitely has, a little bit of, that sort of pureed quality of the pistachios. Mm-hmm. And then this is the big thing, which he said and I think somewhere online I read that he's like, you're not going to believe the difference this makes. When you're done, you add a half a cup of orange juice, and 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And I have to say, the brightness that it brings was really unbelievable. And then you top it with sour cream and a little bit of the leftover pistachios and then a little bit of the saffron liquid you have left over. And I've never worked with saffron liquid. I was really blown away by the actual flavor it adds. It adds such another, as they say on the shows, level of flavor, a depth of flavor. And I was like, look at me chefing.
God, never in a million years would I ever think to create that recipe. That is just so interesting. I would never come up with that. That's so cool. People are amazing.
Totally, yeah. And I was thinking of you when I made it because I thought, oh, this is something Kate would totally love.
Yeah, I would. Sounds delish.
Yeah, it really was. And the good thing about it is it's hearty, it's heavy, so you only need, and it's super rich, so you only need a little bit of it to make you feel full and satisfied.
Well, sign me up. Hello and welcome to another episode of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. I am Kate DeVore.
And I am Rick Fiore.
And this is our ongoing conversation about food, health, weight management, and our endeavor to be and stay healthy in a really tasty world.
With love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others. And we have a really great show coming up for you. But before we get to there, one little thing. Look down at your phone right now. Rate and review us. Give us some stars and tell people what you think on iTunes. That would be great. And also remember, follow us on our social media outlets. Our website is youwon'tbelievewhatIate.com. Facebook and Instagram is You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. And of course, if you have any questions, thoughts, comments, want to tell us what you ate last night, please email them to youwon'tbelievewhatIate@gmail.com.
Yes, indeed. And today we're talking about restaurant etiquette with our fabulous guest, Skyler Schrempp. Skyler's been in the restaurant industry for 15 years in every position, and she trained at French pastry school. She's worked in restaurants from fine dining to pubs to local coffee shops and everything in between, from Chicago to New York City to small town Massachusetts. She now focuses more on making jams and jellies at the back of the house and is also a theater artist here in Chicago who works from costume design to acting to directing and focuses primarily on ensemble-driven pieces. So she is truly a Jill of all trades. Welcome, Skyler. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course.
So our first question for you, Skyler, is what did you eat last night?
Last night I had leftovers. A couple nights ago I went to the Diplomat Cafe for my anniversary, and we ordered a bunch of stuff because it was our anniversary, which meant we took a bunch of stuff home.
Nice.
So last night I reheated 3 mushroom khinkali, which are basically kind of like mushroom dumplings. It's like a dough that's wrapped around like a mushroom filling. So I just steamed them on my stovetop and added some butter, and I opened my last bottle of Georgian wine from last year. So that was really special.
Aww.
I can show it to you.
Tell us a little bit about your history in the restaurant biz.
Yeah, so when I was graduating college with a degree in theater, I realized that I would need to wait tables, that like if I wanted to pursue a career in the arts, I needed a steady income with flexible hours. And obviously a lot of people in the arts go into waiting tables because it's just that. Mm-hmm. Nobody dies if you don't show up. It's not like teaching or being a doctor. So I had a friend that was working at the Garden Restaurant, which was the restaurant in the Art Institute in their courtyard there. Who basically was like, I can get you a job, and but you have to make up a fake resume. So I lied. Here's the secret. Most people that are waiting tables lie to get their first job. No one will hire you if you have no experience.
That explains a lot.
Yes. Yep. So,
and I also remember being unable to get a job in grad school waiting tables for that reason.
You have to lie. And I finally, like a bunch of waitresses were like, just make up a place. Give it, no one's going to call.
Yeah.
So I picked a real restaurant, in my college town and kind of went from there. So I started there and, kind of remained waiting tables up until a couple years ago when I walked out, in a fiery quit storm where I threw down things and like walked out. And that was the last time I waited tables, and now I work back of house. But yeah, it's been about 15 years all in all, in all different positions.
So we want to ask you a few questions about what patrons of restaurants can learn in terms of customer etiquette. So what are some things that patrons do that make your job harder? And one of the classic examples of that is trying to help by taking a glass or something off of a balanced tray. So what are things that don't help that people think are helpful?
I don't know that I've had a lot of experience of people doing things that they think are being helpful. I do, one thing that I think is just always like a red flag to me is when people think they're being helpful when they're like, at the beginning of a meal, they're like, so this will all be on separate checks to make your life easier. And I'm like, actually, no, like I don't do separate checks. And, so like things like that where they're, sort of announcing a strategy that maybe works at their local restaurant, but maybe isn't how we do things. The splitting of checks, I think unfortunately is becoming more common because I do think it's becoming easier with POS systems to do that. My feeling is if you're eating together, like figure out a way to eat together and pay together. But I would say that's the big one of people being like, oh, don't worry. Like you can just put me on this one and her on this one and da 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 da.
As though it's very simple for you to do all that.
It's not. It's like, an extra 30 seconds of brain space and time that like often you don't have. And I don't know, my feeling is like, if you want to eat at a cafeteria, like eat at a cafeteria. I know that might sound really harsh, but if you want to like order at a counter and like get something, that's just yours, that's totally fine. But yeah. Yeah. Or, it's all best intentions, right? Or like you get handed a stack of 6 credit cards with like the things written out on them and you're like, thank you. Like, I'll just verify that this adds up on my books with, everything else that's going on. No problem. But
what about stacking plates or putting paper and garbage and stuff into glasses or cups?
I love when people stack plates. When I would be really busy and, just total madhouse, that did help. And to be honest, like, restaurants have I think a kind of unfair hierarchy where the truth is like a lot of the stuff that might be really not helpful for the dishwasher was something I would never have to deal with, right? So if people are sticking, napkins in a cup, like that wouldn't necessarily end up being my problem. That would just get outsourced to somebody else.
Somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
One of the few jobs I had in a restaurant business is I was a dishwasher, and it would always drive me crazy when stuff came back in crammed in because of how long it takes to pull out.
Yeah. And I know that the thing that so where I work right now at Beans and Bagels, if I ever go out and bust tables, like something that happens a lot where I would say I don't like when people stack is like if you've made a huge mess, don't put that one on the bottom to then stick to everything on the top. Like put that one on the top. Like if you've smeared cream cheese across the bottom of your tray, don't like glue something else.
Let me just make a note. Don't glue with cream cheese. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I would say that honestly, I find stacking plates to be super helpful.
Cool.
Yeah. And sometimes like if you've got your hands full and then someone like picks up and they're like, I've got it. And I think most servers will just be like, I have to come back for that rather than accept the help. You know what I mean?
Right.
If someone's trying to be helpful and it's not the right time. I mean, my motto is I would rather make 15 trips and not break anything than make, 2 trips and have to spend, 15 minutes cleaning up a mess of glass or like put my busser through that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
when you bring things to the table, is it helpful when people try to take things from you as opposed to letting you put them down?
If I have one plate in my hand that I am holding out to you, I am totally fine with that. Okay. If they're grabbing from an arm that has 3 plates on it, definitely 100% not. That's all going to go all over you. So yeah, I mean, and it depends too, like the structure of a table, right? Like, when people have a lot of stuff on the table and there's drinks and there's appetizers. Like it is, I find it really helpful when people clear spaces for things, rather than, I don't know. I hate when I'm at a restaurant and like I have like half a thing of food that I like probably want to eat, but someone's like, oh, you're on to the next thing. I'm going to take this away from you because I need the space. Like I would rather leave that there. That said, it does create a lot of clutter on the table. And so when patrons will like make that space or be like, hey, we're done with this if you want this space, like that's super helpful. That verbalization of like, we're actually not going to eat this, I love that.
Cool.
I'm down with that. Yeah. Really helpful.
Do you find it helpful when, particularly like when you go to refill a water glass and you realize that people have left their cell phone on the table right next to the water glass? Do you find that nerve-wracking as a server? Because you're just thinking, wow, one spill away from dousing your phone.
No, because I would never spill water. So.
Very nice.
No, no, and you know what? Everyone's phone is on the table. Children make me nervous. Children run. That's the only thing where that really gives me pause when there are like tiny children that are running around unaccompanied. That is what truly terrifies me. And like, I don't know why there hasn't been some national news story of some kid getting soup poured on him and then suing the server. Like, I don't know why that hasn't happened yet. I feel like that will happen. That's the only thing that makes me truly, truly nervous.
Right. Have you seen an uptick in people allowing children to run around unaccompanied? I don't remember that from when I was a kid, but maybe I just didn't notice.
Hi. I mean, I don't know if it's a perspective thing. So I actually have a lot to say about this, and I see it from several sides. I do think there's an uptick, and I think it depends the neighborhood you're in. Yeah. I used to work in Park Slope in Brooklyn, which is a very like upper middle class family place. And, women would come in for lunch, and it was always women because men weren't taking their, they were at work, so there's a gender thing here too, where like I want women to be able to go out to lunch even if they have a kid. But they would, I remember specifically there was one time where there were two women, the restaurant was empty. They were sitting at a table and this child was walking on bar stools. This was a tiny child walking across bar stools. And I'm like, should I be worried about this kid? Why are they not worried about this kid? But he was going also to every table, every salt shaker and putting it in his mouth. Oh my God. Every salt shaker. And
that is my worst fear.
You have no idea. I saw this all happen. I saw it happen, so I was able to be like, okay, I need to clean those. Yeah. But the parents never said anything to me. They never said, hey, I'm so sorry. By the way, like, our kid did this. You might want to clean it. Yeah. That's always okay to say. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, my kid made a mess. I'm so sorry. This menu, he just licked. I just feel like you should know that. Like, so I think like there's a bit of it's not my problem that I have a hard time dealing with. And that said, I'm not a parent, so I don't know what that's like. But I mean, it has crossed my mind, like, wow, like if I accidentally, quote unquote, spilled something on this child, I will either lose my job or this child will never do this in a restaurant again. I want to for future generations of people that I'm just like, man, like you are half my size and I'm carrying something that just came off a stove. That's the thing that I think really does really worry me a lot. But the truth is like, what does it mean to have mothers have mobility and be able to go places? And like, does that mean that like the only way women are able to have a life is if that happens? Then I think it's worth it, right? Because I think, and I used to get really mad about changing tables. People would be like, well, why don't you have a changing table in your bar? And I'd be like, because it's a bar, But then I'm like, does that mean that bars are exclusively a place for men and women that don't have babies? I know that's super binary what I just said, but I mean, I don't know. So I see it many ways, I guess. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about when people are ordering. What's the appropriate amount of time that someone should keep you standing there figuring out what they want to order from the menu if they haven't made up their mind?
I don't know. I mean, look, if the restaurant is empty, I'll talk all day. I like talking to people, you know? I mean, I don't think there's an appropriate amount of time. I think it's about circumstances. And like, if it's a really packed restaurant, if you waited to get your table, that means when you sat down, someone else is waiting to get that table. It means your server has like food that's probably popping up on the counter while she's talking to you. I think that the answer is always as soon as possible. And I think like if I say this all the time when I'm at a table, if I'm at a table of people and I can sense that our table is not at a point where we can make a discussion, I will look the waiter in the eye and go, "We're not ready. Can you come back?" Like I'll just make that call for my table because I don't want them standing there while two members of the party have a discussion about what they're going to share with each other. Like that needs to have happened already. And the truth is, like, it's a server's job to talk to you about the food. If you have questions about the food, ask questions about the food, please. If you want to like get something that was like the similar dish that you had when you were in London, like ask that question. But if you are taking up the server's time because you haven't had a discussion about wine with your table to get to the point where you can ask the informed question to your server, then you're not ready and you just need to tell them to go away. They have better things to do.
Awesome.
Yeah. But you know, like I love talking to people. So like if there's no one in the restaurant, I will talk to someone forever about the food. What did you do today? Where were you? Oh, you went to the Art Institute. What did you see there? You know, I'll talk forever. But I think it's a matter of like, what else is going on in the space while you're there?
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey, did you know?
Hey, Kate, did you know that before a hot dog becomes a hot dog, it looks like a disgusting sludge of pink paste?
Yes.
You did?
I did.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I have unfortunately been doing this
no.
podcast long enough that I have come across a number of images of things, and I have seen things that you can't unsee.
And this is the work we're doing, people. Before reshaping foods like chicken nuggets, hot dogs, bologna, and pepperoni, they look like a disgusting sludge of pink paste. And this is done in a process called mechanical separation, which is a cost-effective way to smooth out bone remnants left after the deboning process. Isn't that interesting?
That's good. So we get a little extra calcium.
Yeah, we're just bringing the people the news.
Let's talk about tipping.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know, right? So do people tip reasonably? Like, that's the first question is, what's your experience with tipping? Do people tip well? What is a reasonable tip? Let's start with that.
A reasonable tip is 20%, period. That's my take.
Including tax.
Yeah, so
I was raised that you tip before tax, but I believe that has changed, right?
Well, here's the thing, Kate. Let's say you have $100 bill. Okay, let's say your bill is $100, and there's $10 of tax, so it's $110. What you're actually talking about in terms of tipping on tax is an extra $2, right? Like that's what you're actually talking about, and that's I don't know. I very rarely ring up $100 bill for me personally. So what I would see people do is I would see them talk about like, oh, it's got to be this, but don't tip on tax, and then they'd subtract a couple dollars.
Oh, yeah.
And like, just do the math on the tax, and just know that even if you spend $1,500 at a restaurant, that's different. But when you spent $30 at a restaurant, you went out for lunch, and then you're going, well, I think I should leave $6, but I don't want to tip on tax. I'm going to leave $4. Well, now you've just left someone a really crappy tip.
Yeah, great.
You would see the math, like I would see people's math skills going. And so for me, like the extra brain effort that it takes to be like, well, should it be 25 cents less than this? Because that's like, it's just not worth it. I don't know. That's me personally. Again, if you racked up $100 or like a, $1,000 bill, then sure, take a look at that. It comes down to pennies most of the time, 90% of the time for 90% of the people that are eating out. And I see more people be like, oh, we'll take $1 off. And then it's like, nope, you just went from 18% to 15%. And that makes a huge difference. So my take, it's just brain power. It's just
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
It's a great point about the size of the bill, and it never actually occurred to me that people would just randomly take off an amount for tax.
Me neither.
Rather than actually figuring it out.
Oh, it must be a couple dollars. And you're like, no.
That is a little shocking. What about an expensive bottle of wine? You still think 20% on that as well?
Yeah. I think here's the thing. I think that's bullshit. I think it takes the same amount of energy to carry a $10 bottle of wine as it does a $100 bottle of wine, but that's the way the system's set up. So, I mean, I would absolutely be expected to get a tip on that. I think that's really stupid. I think it's really stupid that like but it's the same with entrees, right? Like if the woman next to me sells a bunch of steaks and my table orders a bunch of salads, I'm going to earn less. That's stupid. But if my steak table, it takes the same amount of energy for me to bring that person a steak than it does to bring them a garden salad. But it's commission, it's commission. And, I have lots of opinions about tipping but I once you get into like, well, she didn't have to work that hard for this. It's like then it all falls apart because you're like, well, I don't get tipped more when I have, 7 tables and I'm working but I don't make more money. It's just numbers. It's just sales. So, we can talk about whether or not it's a good system or not, but that's the system. And, I would absolutely expect to be, if you ordered $100 bottle of wine, I would expect a $20 tip on that. And here's the other thing, like between 18% and 20%, it's the same thing with tax. Like people are like, well, I tip 18%, so I'm gonna do the math for 20% and then take a couple dollars off, and then you end up with a 15% tip.
Yeah.
The difference between a 20% tip and an 18% tip, again, on a $100 bill, that's $2 you're talking about.
Right.
Maybe 3 people. That's less than $1 per person that you're actually talking about. But once you're like, oh, well, it would be 20, $100 is an easy number to talk about, but they would do the same math as they would do with tax, where it's like, oh, I'll just take a couple bucks off of this because I'm a 18% tipper. And it's just, why do, the brain space. I love when restaurants have the little things where that calculates the tip at the bottom. I think that is so awesome. I'm like, every place did that. I love it. I love that. Here's 15, here's 18, here's 20, here's 25, whatever. I think that's like genius. Like just give them a number. They don't, they've had something to drink. They don't want to do math right now. I don't want to. I think tipping is stupid, but that's what we have.
Yeah. So. No kidding.
So what are the situations where what a customer might be justified in not tipping a standard 20%? As far as what a server does at the table.
Do you mean higher or lower?
I'd say either way. Let's go lower right now. What would justify a server being tipped lower? What would really make sense? Because I think people have this idea, well, I'm going to not tip as much because they did this. But what really do you think is a justifiable reason?
So the short answer is if you're going to tip someone less, you need to be really sure that the problem was their fault. The server is the face of the dishwasher, the chef, the busser, the restaurant owner. So I think you have to identify, like if you had a bad experience at a restaurant, like I think you have to identify, like, was that my server or was that like, let's say you waited too long for your food, like that, your server might have nothing to do with that. That said, I have tipped less than 20% exactly twice in my life. And the first time, I was at like Salt and Pepper Diner or something like that in Chicago. And I was there like ordering, eggs with a bunch of my friends or something. And she was just unbelievably rude, just like really just dripping with resentment. And she brought somebody the wrong thing. And, we were like, oh, we actually ordered this. And she just acted like it was the worst thing I don't know if she like got dumped that morning or what, but, she was unbelievably like rude. And I think we left her a 10% tip. I mean, she was rude to us. And the other time, was, I was at a very busy bar in Brooklyn, and there were, 3 really pretty bartenders and a lot of men at the bar, and the bartenders were serving the men and not serving the women because they wanted to get, that's the irony. Like, yeah. I'm the best tipper in the world. Please, if I see you're busy, believe me, you're going to get more than 20% because I, have that perspective. And I watched man after man go up to this bar and get waited on. And I stood there for a long time. And finally, I think in that situation, I ended up going back to my table and grabbing a guy. And I was like, you need to go up there because they're not talking to me. That's unacceptable. That's completely unacceptable. But other than that, I don't know. I think most people that have been servers, it's really hard to get them to tip small amounts because we can instantly go oh, this was this problem. Oh, this was this problem. You have to be, for me personally, you have to be pretty rude for me to actually tip less.
I think the point you make is really great because I think a lot of times people will punish a server because something was wrong with the meal or it didn't taste well. And I think there's an important distinction to be made that, tip your server well because it's generally not their fault. But if you do have an overall issue, don't you think you should bring it to the managers? Whose attention do you bring it to? Because there's also this theory out there that some people throw out, well, how else are they going to know that something's not working? Because they actually think that if a server gets tipped poorly, that somehow is going to make it to the management. No. And it's going to result in a change.
Really not. It just makes you look like an asshole. It's the equivalent of instead of talking to your neighbor, going on a social media page and talking about what a jerk they are. That's not the problem.
That's awesome.
So I have this thing now where when I sit at restaurants with my friends and let's say they order something and they really don't like it. They legit don't like it. Not they can't eat it, but they're this is not what I thought it would be. I'm the person at the table. I'm send it back. Talk to your server, send it back because I would be waiting on people. And maybe they even ordered something that I recommended and I'd serve it to them and then I'd go back and check on them. Hey, how is everything? And they're like, oh, it's good. And I go oh, do you want something different? No. But I could tell they didn't like it. I would so much rather someone be I'm so sorry. I didn't know the sausage would taste this way. Can I please have something? I wanted people to have what they wanted. I wanted them to have a good experience. Now, there are definitely a small minority of people that will send stuff back for power play and send stuff back just to see if they can get something else. But most people aren't like that. And I would always want, I wanted people to walk out of the restaurant feeling I ate something delicious. And I was the person that could help them get that. So if they didn't tell me, I couldn't know.
That is so helpful. I have been with people who are horrified by the concept of sending something back. So that's super helpful. That it's fine. And if you really hate it, ask for something different.
Why would you suffer through it?
Well, the answer is because I ordered it and therefore it's my fault. It's a gamble. You don't know what you're going to get and that's sort of part of the contract is you're stuck with what you ordered. That would be their answer.
Well, and I think obviously it all depends, right? I mean, are you oh, this is fine? Or are you wow, I really don't like this? This is fine. Eat the food,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I always wanted people to, I wanted people to walk out having eaten something really good. And if I'm not told that, then I can't help make that happen. So I really like that. And to be honest, when I have had that experience at restaurant and people do bring me something different, I would say that's when you go above 20%. I would say it's I would leave an extra couple bucks, that they just took a loss on that food for you so that you could have a good experience. The restaurant took a hit. I don't know if you knew this, but restaurant profit margins are about 25% when you're doing well. So it's not a lot. It's a very razor thin margin to make a profit. So if someone does bring you a new plate of food, like that is hospitality 100%, and that they're taking a hit on that for sure. For sure.
The server isn't taking the hit though, right?
The restaurant
Okay,
is.
just making sure. That doesn't come out of the server's anything. Okay. What else would...
Although I have worked at places that had very poor practices about the way they treated their servers, and I have worked at places that were not like that were like, I had places that skimmed my tips, because they were like, well, we have to account for dishes you break. That's illegal, by the way.
That's called wage theft, isn't it?
Yes, it was absolutely wage theft. So, obviously, like, I'm talking, when I say these things, I'm talking about good restaurants that like want.
Totally. What else would justify a higher than average tip other than you're just feeling generous that day or whatever?
If you had a kid that left a bunch of Cheerios over the table.
Yeah. Okay. Making a mess. That's a good one.
If you make a mess and you just have to leave, like maybe you have a screaming kid and you just gotta go, and you just can't bend down and pick up all those Cheerios. Like, leave some extra money, Yeah, I don't know. And I think too, like I can only speak from when I've sat in the diner's chair. But like when I have had that experience of a server really took time and talked to me, and like maybe, we went and ate at Raisu, that Japanese restaurant on Irving Park. It's really good. And the server she just knew the answer to everything. And she was talking about these like crazy like cuts of these like Japanese sushi stuff. And, we wanted to order a really nice bottle of sake, and she brought us like a couple tastes so that we could feel good about making buying a $75 bottle of sake. Like, she brought us, she didn't have to do that. And she just was awesome. So I think, like, just general awesomeness. If someone really goes above and beyond, treat them well.
That's great.
Hey, Skyler, how do you stay healthy in a tasty world?
I don't know that I do. I think there are two answers to that question. I think number one, I believe in eating real food. Like, I actually think that pouring rich, beautiful Wisconsin cream in your coffee is a healthier choice than a fat-free Oreo. Like, I actually think that's a healthier choice.
Mm-hmm.
Eating real food is whatever the butter content or fat content, I think is always a better choice than eating something that is processed that might appear calorically less than. That said, like, I think the other answer to that question is like just a simple question of like, like obviously you can't always be eating cream and sugar, as wonderful as they might be and as organic as they might be. To be honest, like I'm the kind of person it'll creep up on me. Like, I'm at the end of it's creeping up at me that I've been basically having bread, cheese, and wine every day for like 3 weeks, which will culminate in this Georgian I'm having on how to make the feast.
So excited.
I'm so excited too. But honestly, like the next day, like I'll do things I've done. Sometimes I'll hit the reset button. So I don't have any food allergies, but I've done that thing. There's like a cookbook on it. It's called like the elimination diet, where you sort of go hypoallergenic and then you add things back in.
Mm-hmm.
So if I find that like I'm getting to the point where I'm only craving bread, cheese, and wine, which believe me, if I could just live on that, I would. If I'm getting to that point, I'll hit reset and I'll do like a week where like I go back to like fruits and vegetables, just because you start craving what you eat,
Mm-hmm.
You're only glass of wine every evening, you're gonna not want to do without a glass of wine every evening. So sometimes I think like I'll kind of retrain my cravings and my taste buds a little bit. Like, what happens if you have peppermint tea every night instead of a glass of wine? And then I'll creep back into the wine and bread and cheese place, and then I'll reset. So kind of a yo-yo, I guess. But
that's great.
Yeah.
And when you think about staying healthy, how do you do it with love, kindness, and compassion towards yourself and others?
So can I clarify that question? When you talk about staying healthy, is that code word for weight gain?
No.
Okay, because sometimes a lot of people will use that word, and what they're actually saying is like, they'll say I want to be healthy, but what they're actually saying is I want to lose weight.
No, we include psychic well-being and emotional and mental health in that.
I think community is really important. I think that breaking bread with other people is part of being healthy, and this, for me, part of self-love. That might not be everyone's self-love. Again, like we're having this huge, feast, and it was like, it's totally inconvenient time-wise for me, but I was like talking with Kyle, and I was like, we need to do this because we need to like see people. We need to like share our space. I actually just came off of a little, a 2-day Facebook fast, which is like nothing. But
it's something.
It's something. I got really full of rage last week, really full of rage. And I got to the point where I was not going to be able to make any kind of meaningful change in the world with that much rage inside of me. And I had to just turn everything off and just not listen to the news and not absorb my friends' rage on social media, because I was not useful. Like I was at work the other day and I had to tell my coworker, I was like, I actually can't talk about kids in cages right now because I won't be useful to make any kind of change about that when I get this angry. So I would say for me right now at this moment in time, like my anger is something that I'm trying to make useful and not overwhelming. And I do that through not shutting out the world, but knowing when to take a break. I love that thing that's been going around. It's like a Banksy quote. It's like, know when, like, don't quit, take a rest or something. And that is something I think I'm actually very good at. I'm very good at knowing when, like, it's time to just turn off so that you can get up tomorrow and get back out there and make the world better, happier, healthier, safer, more full of good things. You just can't do it if you're overwhelmed and stressed and angry. So
that's awesome. Yeah. And I do know you are an activist. You do a lot of work to make the world better. So just giving some context to the folks who don't know you.
Yeah, it's a crazy time.
Well, Skyler, thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts and your lovely self with us.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And
yes, thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.